Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted the number 1 would be Five Nights at Freddy's, number 2 would be Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, number 3 would be Killers of the Flower Moon, number 4 would be Priscilla, and number 5 would be After Death, and I was so close. I got 4 out of 5 of my predictions right, which was so damn close. If it wasn't for one other movie that we will talk about in a little bit, and the kind of weird circumstances surrounding like how I kind of knew about it right before it allegedly came out in theaters. So let's go over what happened in the overall top 10. Number 1 was, of course, Five Nights at Freddy's. Once again, I don't think there was any doubt about that. There's not really a big competitor until next week. But I think some people were a little shocked at just how much it dropped. It had a drop-off of 76% from its opening weekend, so it only made $19 million this weekend, which now adds to a domestic total of $113 million, which then also adds to a worldwide total of $217 million. So on the whole, yeah, it's still a success. It's not, this doesn't take away the money that it's already made back. Its budget was 20 to 25 million, so they've made that back in spades at this point. It doesn't really matter what the weekend drop off was because it already made back its budget so much so in its opening weekend. Obviously, people have been saying that, blah, blah, blah. But it is very fascinating how they had such a clear kind of like home run kind of success, and it probably still would have dropped off. The opening weekend probably still would have been front loaded with fans, but man, if you kept this off of fucking Peacock, like it wouldn't matter that it's the week after Halloween at this point, and it's a horror movie, so some people may be out of the mood for it. It still would have made just a little bit more. You would have made so much more if you didn't offer it up for free for people who, already have a membership to this Peacock streaming service. And even, it's not even that, because I know some people will probably say like, well, you got to pay for Peacock. And it's like, well, if you also just go on like any, technically illegal movie site, you can find it because people who have the streaming service will rip it and then just put it on there. You know what I mean? So there's just so much money lost by putting it on Peacock. Now, of course, like I said, they've already made it back in spades. That's not really the point that I'm trying to get at. The point is that they could have had so much more, and think of how much they've now lost. Like, think of the people who saw it once in theaters and they were like, man, I really want to watch it again. Good thing I can, because it's in HD, because it's on Peacock, you know what I mean? Those people, instead of going back to the theater, repeat business, instead they're like, well, it's at home. Just, they could have had so much more is what I'm saying. And I think that's kind of the whole point is, they have that initial success, but now it's kind of shrouded in, yeah, but it really dropped off though, because they made this really dumb business decision. Anyways, though, as far as the video game rankings list, it has outgrossed Pokemon the first movie by 28 million domestically, Prince of Persia by 23 million, Rampage by 12 million, and the first Angry Birds movie by 6 million. It is now sitting behind the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider film by 18 million, and then it'll surpass its number 6 spot, and then it's so close to getting into top 5 highest grossing video game adaptations of all time for the domestic numbers. Now, worldwide, like I said, it's sitting at 217 million, so it's outgrossed Resident Evil Extinction by 68 million, Angry Birds 2 by 62 million, Tomb Raider Cradle of Life by 60 million, Pokemon the first movie by 54 million, and Need for Speed by 23. It is now sitting behind Resident Evil Retribution by $23 million. So it's still kind of chugging along, despite the huge drop off. It's still surpassing a lot of these other movies, but like I said, it just makes you think, how much more would it made? You know what I mean? Like, how much more could it have made that it is now losing out on? Is there going to be a chance that it could have outgrossed one of the higher grossing video game runs, whether it's domestic or worldwide, but because of, Peacock, they're going to fall behind? I don't know. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter though. And people have pointed out it doesn't really matter because they've already made their money back. I get it. It's still fascinating, this stupid business decision. Let's move on to number 2 though, which is Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, making 13 million, adding to a domestic total of 165 million. So for the 2019 domestic runs list, it has outgrossed Elemental by 11 million, 9 million over Creed 3, and 8 million over Transformers Rise of the Beast. It is now sitting behind Mission Impossible Impossible: Dead Reckoning by $7 million. So that is that's quite incredible. But reminder that Mission Impossible deserved to make a whole lot more. Barbenheimer kind of crushed that one. Unfortunately, it's a really good movie. It's out on digital. You can stream it or you can buy the Blu-ray. It's really good. Please support the movie. Anyways, sorry. Mild promotion over for that movie. Worldwide, though, it is sitting at $218 million now, so it's outgrossed D&D by $11 million, and it is $1 million over the worldwide run of Fnaf. It squeaked by the Fnaf movie. Isn't that funny? It now needs $24 million until it outgrosses an old friend of the show, Sound of Freedom. So get him, Taylor, get Jim Caviezel. Sitting at number 3, we have Killers of the Flower Moon, holding over pretty well from last weekend. Last weekend it made $9 million. This weekend made $7 million. So there you go. Not a bad drop off for a movie that, if you just look at the, average box office numbers, isn't doing well. But like I've been saying, all these stipulations of it doesn't really matter. Apple doesn't care how much it makes in theaters. They care about streaming numbers, and they fund so many other shows that don't get put into theaters. They don't sell physical copies of, so they're not really making a whole lot of money. You know what I mean? I don't want to repeat myself because I've already listed everything that it doesn't really matter, and Martin Scorsese doesn't really care how much it makes. But, it's holding over pretty solidly, and I think, once Oscar season comes, people will be interested to see it. If it's not on Apple yet, which I'm assuming it will be at some point, the numbers could go up. But it made $7 million this weekend, which adds to a domestic total of $52 million, so it's $10 million over Casino for Scorsese's filmography, and it's a couple $100,000 over The Color of Money, and is sitting behind the domestic run of Hugo by $21 million. So that's the thing, is that it's catching up to a lot of these other movies right now in his filmography that are, they're remembered, they're classics. Worldwide, now that it's sitting at $109 million, it's outgrossed Color of Money by $57 million, and it's only $1 million behind Casino. Some people would say, that's their favorite Scorsese, it's one of his best, so, it's outgrossing a lot of these other movies. I think it'll be talked about for a long time. It's just going to be one of those movies. Anyways, let's move on to number 4, which is Priscilla. I actually was so shocked that I got this prediction right. I knew it was kind of like I don't know, because I don't know how many theaters it's playing in. It's one of those things, but I was so shocked to see it actually get to number 4. I was so happy. It made $5 million this weekend, which is only on a budget of $20 million. There's no worldwide total for this thing right now. I'm not sure if this will expand next weekend, and because of that other big movie that is coming out, I don't know how many people are even going to be aware of that. I'm not sure how this thing will have legs in the awards season, because outside of Kaylee Spaney, and even that is kind of a stretch as far as Oscar buzz, because I feel like there's a couple other women that are being talked up more as far as their lead performances. I'm not sure how this movie will go as far as the award season, so I'm not sure if it'll have that thing of re-releases, people talk about it, people go see it more. It'll be interesting if it can get past the doubling point of this $20 million budget. I've heard good things, I would love it to, but I don't know, Anyways, let's move on to number 5, the big shock this weekend, Radical, which I first found out about a couple nights ago because I went to see Anatomy of a Fall, and then this trailer plays for this movie with Eugenio Derbez, and I didn't know a thing about it. I didn't know this was a thing that was made, and I'm like, it looks like a pretty good movie, and I didn't realize that I guess it was playing in a couple, it wasn't playing in any of the theaters near me at the moment, but I guess it was playing in a couple around the country, so it made $2.7 million domestically, which is adding to a worldwide total of $7 million. I'm not sure what the budget of this thing is, but I mean, the fact that it cracked the top 5 with no word of mouth as far as I'm concerned, even if the number's pretty low, and the numbers have been pretty low here, that's still pretty impressive, to say the least. So maybe check this one out. I don't know anything about it. I don't know, I don't really know what the consensus has been as far as have critics enjoyed it or not. So maybe go in blind. Maybe I will someday if it ever shows up at a theater near me. Number 6 is The Exorcist Believer, making $2.1 million, adding to a domestic total of $63 million. It is still behind the original film by $167 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $125 million. So it is $303 million behind the original film, but hey, they can technically say they've quadrupled that $30 million budget since it passed over the 120 margin. So there you go. Will it make 5 times that budget by getting to 150 worldwide? Doubtful. Let's move on to number 7, which is After Death, making $2.0 million, adding to a domestic total of $9 million. So this movie definitely doesn't seem to have the same kind of appeal that Sound of Freedom had. The Angel Studios released both, and that was why I predicted it last weekend, and I did kind of, make the right assumption that it would, get some attention, but I guess it just doesn't have the same kind of hold or word of mouth. Good. I don't know anything about this. I'm just being an asshole. Let's move on to number 8, which is Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie, making $1.9 million, adding to a domestic total of $62 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $169 million. So this movie's slowly creeping out of here, but the little fall hit that could for families out there, maybe more so little kids. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Paw Patrol, if it's more of a little kids thing, or if it's like, everyone in the family can enjoy it. I'm not going to find out, though. Let's move on to number 9, which is What Happens Later. The movie I knew was coming out, but I didn't think it would crack the top 5 at all. I don't think many people knew about it, and there you go. And this movie actually had like a SAG-AFTRA like interim agreement, so there was a little bit of promotion, like with Meg Ryan and David Duchovny going about, but it's just one of those movies that was kind of under-marketed even at that, so a little too late. But even though it only made $1.5 million this weekend, the budget is only $3 million. So maybe with a limited worldwide run, maybe they can push over that, or maybe it's just low enough it can maybe make some waves on streaming when it's put out on there. They can recoup that. I don't know. But the budget is so low, it just makes me think, maybe it's not that big a loss, because making half of your initial production budget, maybe that's not too bad. But then again, this might sink next weekend. So there you go. Closing out the video, number 10, Freelance, movie that came out last weekend, and I said it was going to sink, and here it is, making $1.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $4 million. It is $6 million behind the director's, one of the director's previous films, The Gunman, which is, the lowest grossing film of his until this movie came along, as far as the American films that he's made. So, and it's still on a budget of $40 million, so it's still nowhere near crossing over that initial point, let alone doubling it. So, apologies to Mr. John Cena and Alison Brie and good old Christian Slater. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I think, is pretty easy. The Marvels. I know there's been a lot of talk as far as like, it's gonna flop, the tracking's been pretty low, blah, blah, blah. But either way, it's gonna be number 1. It'll be interesting to see how this does, and then to kind of compare how Captain Marvel launched in the, pre-Endgame kind of season. And now we're kind of in, it's been 4 years after Endgame, and there's kind of a roadmap for the MCU, but it seems like audience interest has kind of waned, and, more opinions have been discussed about it, and people have kind of come to different conclusions about it. So it'll be interesting to see how this one does. Number 2, I think, will be Five Nights at Freddy's. Number 3, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour. And then number 4, I think The Holdovers has a little bit of a chance to break in there. And then number 5, Killers of the Flower Moon. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.